Hey, what is up guys? This is Nishi from MST.TV here, back with another Market Watch episode. So today we're taking a look at some more cards that are trending on the secondary market. Now of course, we had the remote duel YCS this past weekend, which didn't really change anything, but it did show us a couple of interesting things. But I think everyone's eyes are really on next year. We have Burst Protocol coming in February, and then Rarity Collection 5 coming in April, not to mention the 300th YCS happening over that Valentine's Day weekend as well. That said, a lot of players are getting cards ready for when Yu-Gi-Oh! Kicks off in 2026, which is causing a ton of movement on the secondary market. Let's get started. Kicking things off, we have a meta-relevant card here, and it's Tiras, Keeper of Genesis. So despite the name, no, this isn't necessarily a Genesis format card. This card is a generic rank 5 Xyz that's one of the oldest in the game, coming out back in Generation Force, which is the first core set with Xyz monsters in it. Tiras has a few different effects. It can't be destroyed by card effects, and at the end of the battle phase, if it did battle, you get to destroy an opponent's card on the field, and then you have to detach a material from Tiras during each of your end phases. So overall, Tiras is a pretty solid rank 5 option. It's just that it has never really done enough over the last few years to justify seeing play in any sort of meta strategy. However, it seems that the card is starting to get some attention once again, as we've seen a resurgence of Vanquished Soul K9 over the last couple of YCS events. This is obviously something that K9 is able to make really easily, and its protection from destruction means that it can't be outed by something like Cookie Yummy. This is particularly strong if you happen to make it with a Lupus underneath it, and essentially it guarantees that you'll be able to go into Zeus to wipe the board during main phase 2. Now with Tiras, it's actually a really difficult card to find. This was originally a secret rare in Generation Force, and those copies have jumped from being $20 or $25 before to now being around $35 to $40 each. And then the only other time it was printed, it was in Battle Pack 1, so this card does have a star foil and common printing. These were actually $10 for the longest time because it just has been that long since the card's even been printed. They're now up even higher at $15 to $20 each, though admittedly all of the versions of this card have very few quantities available. I feel like Tiras is definitely due for a reprint at some point, maybe even in Rarity Collection 5. It's just been such a long time since we've seen this card reprinted at all. And I will say, given how much more play Vanquished Soul K9 has seen recently, it's looking like this is a fairly meta-relevant card that you guys should all be aware of. That said, I can't really justify holding onto too many copies of this card. Keep a single copy for yourself to play in whatever K9 strategy you want to try out, but definitely look to offload your extras before the card gets reprinted. Here's an interesting one to keep note of. It's Tenyi Spirit Tsuruya. So this card is among the newer pieces of Tenyi support coming out in Supreme Darkness. Its first effect is actually a little bit different from the other Tenyi monsters. You can special summon it from hand if you control a face-up non-effect monster, or if you control a worm, which is pretty useful. Now this does have another effect where you can cheat out a Tenyi Link monster from your extra deck. That effect isn't really all that relevant. Really, we just care that this is a level 4 tuner that you can bring out extremely easily. So in the next core set, Burst Protocol, we're getting an extremely powerful card called Fallen of White Dragon. One of the ways that players in the OCG are using the card is in the branded Sword Soul deck. I'm not too familiar with it. It seems kind of weird because they're playing branded without branded fusion. Anyways, Tsuruya is just a one of, I believe. It's just so that you have something else that you can search for in certain scenarios. But yeah, definitely an interesting tech, though it's not necessarily a top tier strategy over there quite yet. Tsuruya has only ever been printed in Supreme Darkness, as it's a relatively new card. This card has historically been around $5. It's never really gone below that since Supreme Darkness wasn't a great set value-wise, and people really wanted something to have value that they could pull out of it. However, we now have the card actually jumping up to around $9 to $10 each. The crazy thing is that even the QCR printing of the card, they're only around $20 as well, so if you are wanting to grab this card, it definitely might be worth considering picking up those QCRs since it's only roughly 2 of the secret rares in terms of price. We should expect to see Tsuruya reprinted in the 2026 tins, though those obviously won't be until August or September of next year, so quite a ways away. At the same time, I know a lot of people are excited for the new Fallen card, but I don't know how meta it's going to be. It's obviously largely going to depend on the next ban list and how it treats the decks from Justice Hunters. That said, it's probably better to move off of your extra copies of this card as well. It seems to just be a one-of for the most part, so keep a single copy, maybe even a set if you really miss playing Sword Soul, but move your excess copies while they are getting attention now. Up next, we have Arms of Genix Return 0. So this is a card that's a level 10 synchro monster that requires the tuner you make it with to be a dark monster. This card actually has the potential to negate multiple monster effects in the same turn. You can banish a monster from your graveyard with the same attribute as the monster your opponent activated the effect of, though you can only negate one attribute per turn. It does have another effect where you can target banished Genix monsters. That's not really the effect we're too concerned with unless you're playing pure Genix. Anyways, Genix Return 0 has gotten some attention recently because of the new Synchron cards that came out in the Legendary 5Ds decks. The whole deck plays a lot of monsters that have different attributes, so Genix Return 0 can potentially be an interesting option if you have the right combination of cards in your hand and can get the right monsters into your graveyard. At the same time, I've been told that this is a solid level 10 synchro option over in Genesis format as well. I'm not super familiar with the decks in that format. Now, Genix Return 0 only has one printing as a secret rare back in Battles of Legend Terminal Revenge. This wasn't even a Starlight rare, so just the secret rare version, but this wasn't one of the short printed cards in the set. Because of that, this card was basically bulk, coming in at only 50 cents each or so. However, we've recently seen the card shoot way up as it's now going to cost you $5 per copy. Anyways, because it is new, I don't think it should be reprinted anytime soon. However, at the same time, I don't think that the Synchron deck is anywhere close to being meta relevant. And even in Genesis format, right? I don't think that this is necessarily like the default level 10 synchro option that you want to go into blindly. That said, I do think that this card is going to crash in price quickly. It's just going to take a little bit of time for people to dig up their copies and throw them onto the market, since quite a few copies of this card would have been pulled. Hold a single copy for yourself since it does have a lot of cool potential and you probably didn't pay too much for it, but look to offload the rest of them while there is some hype around it. Next up, let's briefly take a look at Fairy Tail Rella. So of course, as we mentioned last week, we have a whole bunch of Fairy Tail cards coming in Blazing Dominion, the core set after Burst Protocol. Now, to be honest, the cards do look pretty underwhelming, especially in the context of today's game. They don't really seem great at all, but aside from that, they look really cute and they'll definitely be something that casual players are going to want to put together. Fairy Tail Rella is probably one of the more forgotten Fairy Tail monsters. It stops both players from targeting monsters on the field with spells, and then you can discard a card to equip an equip spell from anywhere to this card. So from what I've seen online, I think this is just something that you still play in your deck so that you can search it with Fairy Tail Luna. Even though Fairy Tail Luna can search for itself, you still want something else to search at the end when you've gone through all of your other targets. But one of the new Fairy Tail cards is actually also an equip spell that lets you conduct a fusion summon, and there's a new Fairy Tail fusion monster, so I guess it does kind of make sense that you would play this one. Anyways, this card has like 3 different common printings. They're all bulk and no one really cares about any of them. However, this card got one super rare printing back in OTS Tournament Pack 6. Honestly, I had forgotten that this card ever even came holo because this was like 25 cents or something. I do remember people throwing this card on the table at locals if they did pull it, but now these are actually all the way up at $5 each just because it can be used as a one-of. Now moving forward, I don't know if this gets a reprint or not. I don't think it does given that it's so available. It's just that maybe Konami will want to print more of the Fairy Tail cards in a holo printing since they're so cute. But yeah, obviously, this shouldn't be anything close to a meta-relevant theme, so this is just one of those cards that you dump now, since the support was just revealed, or you wait until the set officially comes out, and for some hype to build as people pull the cards and try to get rid of them then. So the other deck that got support revealed in Blazing Dominion from the last week or so is Trains, and Trains are probably the more meta-relevant of the two themes, or at least they have more potential. Because of that, we did see a pretty significant spike in one of the best cards in the deck, Urgent Schedule. This is a quick play spell that you can only activate if your opponent controls more monsters than you do, but it lets you summon a level 4 or lower and a level 5 or higher Earth Machine monster from your deck in defense position with their effects negated, and you can only attack with machines for the rest of the turn. So objectively, this card is like really good as it's a double emergency teleport for you to make Synchro, Xyz, or Link plays with. And typically, Trains will use the machine bodies to make something like a Leeb and try to OTK you, which is okay because they're all machines so they can all still attack. I think that in the past, Trains or Earth Machines have seen some success as a rogue tier 2.5 deck, but maybe the new support will make them a little bit more competitive. Anyways, Urgent Schedule is a really powerful card, but it's very limited in terms of its availability, so we're seeing all versions starting to trend upwards in price. The card has 2 different holo printings. It was originally an ultra rare in Legendary Duelist Sisters of the Rose, and then it got a secret rare reprint in the Legendary Duelist Season 2 box. The Ultra was actually the harder version to pull since it did have to come from a regular pack, and that pack wasn't particularly popular. That said, either holo version was around $4 before this news. However, the Ultras are now up to $16 each, while the secret rares are up to $12. The card received 1 other printing as a rare from Maximum Gold Eldorado. Those were only $1 or so before, but even those are up to $3 per copy now. With this card, I feel like it's going to be the type of thing that's included in Rarity Collection 5, where it's a cool reprint, but the fact that it's included in the set just makes it so worthless afterwards. At the same time, I don't really expect Trains to be meta. I think they'll just continue to be more of a rogue strategy. This is definitely another card to look to move before its likely reprint tanks its value. And finally, the last card we have for today is Saint Azamina. So to be honest guys, I don't really understand this one. However, I noticed that the card was actually worth something when I'm pretty sure before it was like one of the worst cards that you could pull. Saint Azamina technically requires 2 level 6 or higher monsters as material, where 1 is a fusion and 1 is a synchro, so it could be a good super poly target maybe. This card stops your opponent from targeting any of their own cards anywhere, or this card, and your opponent takes battle damage that you would have taken from battles involving this card. And then if this card was fusion summoned this turn, as a quick effect you can special summon a level 9 or lower Azamina monster from your deck or extra deck. So I tried looking into what was possibly using this card, and the list that you guys can see on screen here is one that was apparently using 2 copies of this in the extra deck. I believe it made top 8 at a regional in Newcastle. I guess it is cute because you can cheat it out with the hollowed Azamina, though it is going to be a little bit more costly. Maybe it's a good option later on in the game. Anyways, Saint Azamina was one of the worst secret rare pulls out of Supreme Darkness. This card used to only be $3 or so. I actually thought it was only worth like $1. However, the deck actually getting some attention now has caused the card to be up at about $9 per copy. The QCR printing still exists as well, but those haven't really moved. They're still around $25 to $30 per. Just like what we said with Saruya, this card shouldn't be reprinted until the 2026 tins, which is quite a ways away. I'm going to assume, however, that this is just a case of a very good player who attended a relatively small regionals, and this isn't going to be a continuing trend where we see a bunch of different Azamina players topping, since I didn't see this card pop up at all at the Remote Duel YCS either. That said, this is probably just another card to offload if you can find someone that's actually wanting to pick it up. Alright guys, that is all I have for today's episode. Not too much going on right now, obviously because Phantom Revenge is delayed a little bit. The thing I am keeping an eye out right now is for the Legendary 5Ds decks. I think those are really good value, especially if you can move the Mulch Armies early on. I think there's a chance that maybe we see Meowls or Perulia reprinted in Rarity Collection 5 as something of a chase card, so that the cards are available in all of those different rarities. So do be careful a little bit about holding onto those for too long, but if you can flip them over the course of the next month or so, I think that's a really great idea. Anyways guys, if you did enjoy today's Market Watch episode, please make sure you let me know by hitting that thumbs up button. Make sure you leave a comment in the comment section down below. Hit subscribe if you haven't already, and until next time guys, don't forget to hold on to your MST.TV.